Hey folks, it's Philip here with the Everyday Fighter podcast. Today is a little bit of a different episode. Up to this point, with the interviews, I've been talking with everyday fighters, kind of sharing their journeys into the fight game, into martial arts, into boxing, and all of that. And of course, getting the insights and kind of learnings from them as we've had our discussions with them. But in addition to our fights in the ring and on the mat, we have fights outside as well that we can all relate to. So from time to time, I will have guests on that can speak to those types of things. The challenges that we have in our daily lives and any strategies and ways that we might be able to approach those fights so that we can improve our chances for winning those rounds, winning those battles. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Adrian Chavez. Now, Dr. Chavez has a PhD in nutrition, and he's very passionate about helping everyday people get through their healthcare challenges, not only through nutrition, but also improving their lives in a holistic way. We'll talk about how he got started, how it was very different for him kind of growing up, particularly in a household that didn't have nutrition as a priority, and what challenges came with that. But then how he was able to turn the corner for himself as he started studying nutrition more and over time getting even more passionate about it because he was able to help people with all the knowledge he had access to, just given the area of study that he's in. And now he actually specializes in working with individuals to improve their health through nutrition. People with autoimmune diseases, with gut challenges, and he talks a bit about that as well. And then also his perspective on what is lacking in the kind of traditional medical approach that he's found hasn't worked with many of his clients, but people like us would be able to start taking back some of that power and improving our nutrition. But before we get into the interview with Dr. Chavez, I wanted to bring us to our episode spotlight. As a reminder, these folks that I spotlight, they have no idea who I am, but they're just people that I might have heard of in one way or another that I think are just doing great work, Today, I wanted to bring to your attention an organization called Heroes of the Second World War. Now, I found out about this organization through a segment on CBS Evening News, On the Road with Steve Hartman. And Steve had highlighted a young man just straight out of high school, and his focus had been on interviewing people that had served in World War II. So American veterans that served in World War II. He was really struck by the sacrifice that these amazing people had made for our country, and he was afraid that a lot of that personal history, these personal accounts from these men that had served, was disappearing. And quite frankly, there's some truth to that because every day, just through old age or just they're getting to that point where these people are dying, in the scores every single day. So he took it upon himself. He had a passion for going out and actually interviewing these people. So he, with his own money, in his own car, with his own equipment, he'd go out and seek out these people, these veterans, call them up, say, hey, my name is Rishi Sharma. I want to know about your story. I want to know about what you did in the war so that we can have it preserved for, people in the future. to learn from. And that's what he's been doing for the last few years. And again, just on his own dime, if he's able to get donations for it, then he's doing that. But he's trying to get in as many of these interviews as possible before it's no longer possible for us to get that knowledge. So, Rishi Sharma, Heroes of the Second World War. If you just go to Heroes of the Second World War.org, you can find out more about him, and you can actually access these interviews for free to learn about this very important part of our history. So that is our spotlight for today. And with that, let us jump into my interview with Dr. Adrian Chavez.
Passionate about health and fitness, about living a life that I think most people are not living right now. So most older adults are living a life where they're over medicated, they have a low physical capacity. I don't think that that's what we should be doing. And I'm very passionate about helping people avoid that, because we can avoid it, but we're just not being given the right medical care, if you will, preventative health care, if you will, access to the right information, the right resources, in the right environment to make really good choices and avoid that in later life. So when I was younger, I got really into that idea of aging very well and avoiding all of the medical and pharmaceutical treatments that I saw basically all of my grandparents and all the older adults that I knew around me that were on. So that led me to getting a PhD, and to where I'm at now is now running a business. I coach clients. I run group programs. I run a podcast called Your Nutrition Prescription. I have courses online. So I do a whole plethora of different things online to help people. I focus mainly on dads and some of my stuff, but and then in other stuff, like my one-on-one clients, I focus mostly with individuals with autoimmune disease, but to just generally help people get better, find a better place with their health.
Let's go back to that though, man. I mean, it's hear the passion in your voice. I mean, it's I'm expecting a geyser here on a lot of different things, but I mean, it came from something very personal to you. Sounds like, right? I mean, you talk about your grandparents, you talk about the environment that you're in, where you're seeing people in the circumstances and situations that they're in. What was that? What did you see? What started this kind of the spark inside you?
I mean, I grew up in Houston, Texas, and that is one of the most obese cities in the nation.
Is it?
At that point, it was like consistently getting number one. I think the population has shifted a little bit, but I was just around people who were very unwell, and I played basketball my whole life, so I ate terribly. Like, I ate nothing but processed food, but I played basketball for 4 to 5 hours a day. That was just my life. And I was able to stay in really good shape because of that. When I left, when I moved out of my house, or my family's house, and went to college, when I graduated high school, that was a wake-up call for me. It was like, okay, I go to the grocery store and I'm like, I know this stuff isn't keeping me healthy. So now I got to figure out, now that I'm responsible for feeding myself, I need to figure out what the right stuff to eat is.
Well, was it from the classes you started taking, or was it just the fact that, I've got to buy my own food now, and now I actually have to start making decisions?
I think it was the buy my own food. Like, I was just in the grocery store and I was going through the aisles of all the processed food, and I'm like, that's not what my body needs. Like, I just knew that intuitively. So because I knew that, and because I knew that I was responsible for feeding my body now, I wasn't relying on family and in that situation, I started learning about nutrition. I started learning about exercise at that time. I was an accountant major. I've always been pretty good at math. So I was not an accountant major, engineering at that point. So I'm taking nothing but math classes. And then outside of my coursework, I'm reading about nutrition and exercise science all the time. So then after a couple of years of doing that, I realized that I needed to switch my major. But, I had that voice in my head of like, oh, how are you going to make money doing that? Because that is, that's the first thing that most quote unquote responsible people think is like, oh, how, that the amount of money that you're going to make with that degree doesn't compare to the amount of money that you can make if you stay in engineering or go to finance or something like that. So, I kind of battle with that, but I followed my passion because, it's just, I don't know, it's just the way I'm wired. Like I was like, I'll figure it out. Like I'm going to figure something out in this space that's going to provide me the income that I want to and the lifestyle that I want to. So that's where, it just started with that grocery store trip and knowing I had that responsibility. And I'm a big believer in, we have a personal responsibility. We have a personal responsibility to take care of ourselves in every way. And I guess I just took on that responsibility early on and just started reading about it. Right after that, I'm at bodybuilding.com blogs like every day because that was like the main source of information back then, or the most easily accessible source of information on the web. So I'm just reading all of that to try to get information about how do I need to feed myself. Over the next 6 months, I put on about 25 pounds of muscle, shifted my body composition dramatically, and kind of, followed a bodybuilder type lifestyle for a while, even though I never had any intention of competing or anything like that. I just wanted to see what I could do as far as like putting on muscle and staying lean. And, I did that for a few years and then grew out of that because I know that I just recognized that wasn't best for long-term health.
So, I mean, because that's quite a jump. I mean, it sounds to me that it probably helped that you left home to kind of form those types of opinions, and it makes it easier, particularly, and I don't know what, if you had roommates or if you had people that you're hanging around there, if they were already walking down that path of being healthy, or was that just all you and you just kind of jumped right into it, or?
It was me, but my brother. So I ended up living with my brother my sophomore year of college, and he and I we ate the same way.
Oh, really?
So that was really easy.
Okay.
We would actually cook for each other and stuff. So that was super easy during that year. And I was really consistent during that year. But every other year, I lived in roommate environments, and it's not like I was like this perfect eater back then, but I wasn't eating fast food for every meal. I was making my breakfast every day. I was making my lunch every day. Any snacks were usually I was just mindful about what I was eating. I was trying to pay attention to it. I didn't know much about what I was doing because I had only had information from
bodybuilding.com
blogs. So I was just like, eat 500 grams of protein and you're good.
Yeah. The internets. Yeah.
But that's where it started in that, over a decade ago now, still been on the path, and it's evolved from, working on myself to working with other people, from an athleticism, aesthetics perspective to really now looking at it on another level of this is medicine, nutrition, exercise, lifestyle. Lifestyle is the most potent medicine in most cases. In 90% of things that people go to see their doctor for, lifestyle is the most effective treatment approach, but it's just not available to primary care physicians or the conventional medicine system. So that's what I do, is I offer an alternative solution, and I work with people in helping them to figure out how to make those lifestyle changes in order to overcome their health issues.
As you're making this change for yourself, how did it affect your, say, perception and even relationships, maybe up to that point, with your family that was living this way, was raising you in this way, completely different? Whether, it was by choice or forced, that was the only way they could do it. How did that kind of go for you?
So I didn't have any bitterness or anything like that, just because
look what you did to me.
No, just the information wasn't there. 20 years ago, it's just hard to find the right information. Now you can sign up for one of my programs, and I give you everything that I have put together over the last 10 years, and you can get high quality information from multiple different people online where you can, I mean, the information is just there now. It wasn't there back then. And circumstantially, like, no one was home. My mom was working full time. My stepfather was working full time. Like, there had to be processed food. It had to be convenient. That was really the only option based on the circumstances. So I wasn't really bitter at all, with the relationship moving forward. You don't know how many times I went home and would just complain about all of the junk that was in the
Well, that was my next thing. Is like
I've thrown stuff away before. But then there's a point where, with maturity, as I got older, realized, people are going to do what they're going to do. The best thing you can do is just set the best example that you can. And one of the things that I want to kind of point out there is the best example, I think, in my from my perspective, is not being 1,000% strict. Some people think, oh, that's setting the best example is being like completely unwaveringly strict. But I feel like people are turned off from that because they don't feel that that's attainable. They don't feel that that's realistic. So I've always practiced, balance. I don't go too crazy. I just, if I'm not feeling great, then yeah, we're going to tighten things up. But if I'm feeling great energetically and, I'm going to go out for, like tonight, I'm going out for a couple of drinks with a friend and probably eat with a couple of friends and probably not eat the best food. And, but they see that, oh, he can still come out with this and he still maintains that healthy lifestyle. Like the people that I'm going out with, it's two of my friends from a long time ago. They've significantly changed their lifestyle just because of the fact that I've set that example of you can still live and have fun and enjoy good food, but the small changes are really important. Those everyday tweaks that will make a huge difference.
How do you influence, or can you, people that are a bit older, they're a little bit more set in their ways? I mean, whether they're family or not, right? That if you see they're taking all this medication or whatever, that that could be harmful in other ways, right? Helping in some things, but harmful in other ways. How do you get them to start taking those steps? I mean, without being a missionary about it, right? Without it's like, here is my book or whatever. You know what I mean? It's that's a challenge because it's. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that's something we got to talk about. It's like, there's environment, there's access to information, there's willingness, but I think even just getting them on, getting it on their radar. How do you do that?
Best case scenario is going to be through kids usually, and it's also going to be like after a health scare.
There it is right there.
I mean, this is just my experience.
Absolutely.
The individuals that come to me for consultations and to work with me one-on-one, it's because they were, they had a stroke or something like that. And then their child or someone they know who's younger, who listens to my podcast or follows my content, suggested that they reach out to me. So that's the way that I've seen most of my clients that I've dealt with, the older adults. But there's also a smaller proportion of older adults who are just kind of waking up. They're starting to get a little bit more extra time, starting to do some research, and like, wow, the system that I knew, that I believed was helping me for this entire time isn't really doing much. It's just allowing me to continue to deteriorate or continue to break down. So I've spoken, or I've had consultations and worked with those individuals as well, where they're like, man, I was literally eating bread and cheese and just complete junk food up until a couple of years ago, and was on multiple medications, and then they just changed their diet, they got off some medications, and then they start continuing that, and they'll find me along the way and continuing to tweak it. And it's incredible to see that, because, really, even if you're 65, over the course of a year, 2 years, you significantly change your diet. You get really good on your nutrition, your routine, your sleep, your movement. You can be a new person. in 2 years. We almost turn over 99% of our cells in 2 years. You can have a new body in 2 years, and even at the age of 65. Now, many people are going to require. I mean, you're going to be best working with someone who can help you optimize that, especially at that age. But the results that you can get from lifestyle that's what I'm at. That's like my whole mission, is really just to get people to create more awareness around that, and get people to understand more.
I think there's like a challenge in it, though, in that, absolutely, if they've got a life scare, they had to go to the ER. It's like, okay, yeah, this is a wake up. If they have external factors that, oh man, I want to be around for my kids, that type of thing. Even if they didn't have a specific scare, it's like, well, I want to see them graduate. I want to walk my, talked about, you're working with dads. I want to walk my girls down the aisle, kind of a thing. But for the people that don't get kind of those wake up calls, here's the thing: when you say change your lifestyle, what I hear in some cases, not necessarily nutrition or anything, but maybe some other things as well. There's a bit of resistance there, because almost inherently, whether it's meant to be there or not, it's, well, the lifestyle that you've been living has been wrong. The lifestyle that you've been living up to this point is wrong. And I think there's some ego, there's some pride associated with that as well, particularly if you enjoy the benefits, not necessarily the health benefits, nutrition benefits or whatever, but like, yeah, we get it together all the time for like nachos, and we have these parties and beer and all that kind of stuff. And like, is that wrong? Because there's like, it's almost like connected, so closely connected that they don't want that any move towards, away from that is going to be leaving some of that, if not all of that, behind. Is that something that you hear, or is that something that's out there? You understand, or?
Yeah. No, I definitely do. With the clients that I'm working with, they're mostly pretty motivated.
They have some motivation.
And I heard this. I mean, it's just, it's not a free program. So when people have to pay money up front, they're usually gonna do that. But I used to work. So when I was doing my PhD, I used to run free programs in community centers with people who were below the poverty line, most of them, or right around the poverty line, and were teaching nutrition. So, we dealt with a lot of those issues more so there, because they weren't there. They didn't have a huge body transformation or health goal that they came in with. They were just, this is a program that is interesting. So I think I saw that more there, as far as like the cultural, emotional ties and the friends and all of that. And that's where, I mean, really it just comes down to knowing your body, knowing what your body needs, and knowing how to make adjustments. So it's not that you can't go to a Super Bowl party and go have a good time, but if you're eating cheese and chips, you have to understand that that's 1,500 calories. You can eat 3 burgers and fill up that same amount of, like, a decent serving of cheese and chips. So getting a little bit of understanding of the nutritional value of foods, what that's providing you, what you need, how to get that. And once you kind of develop that understanding, that self-awareness, you can make better choices. So you go to the Super Bowl party and you see the cheese and chips and you're like, well, I don't want to use that 1,500 calories on the cheese and chips, but this grilled meat over here looks delicious, and I know that I can eat a plate of that for 900 calories, and I'm going to be full all night, and I can just use the other 600 for beer, and then you're good to go. So if you understand that, if you know that about your body, you know how to make adjustments within the day, you know how to make adjustments within the week, you know how to make adjustments over time. Like if you're going to go on a cruise for 2 weeks, you know that you don't want to have to be extremely strict, and you want to enjoy yourself multiple times during that cruise. You just have to learn about your body, though, and you have to make be able to make those adjustments. After you do that, you don't have to give these things up. It's not like where you say, okay, I'm going to change my lifestyle and I never get to touch this stuff again. No, it's just that stuff is not the norm anymore. That stuff is the exception.
I think it's to your point what you said earlier, like people have this this perception of I got to go 100% all the time. It's just very, very strict, and I'm losing more than I might be gaining. Particularly if I enjoy the freedom of just choosing what I eat or whatever. Oh man, I can't choose anymore. That means that I'm more handcuffed, right? But that's not the case.
That's not the case in most cases. With my autoimmune disease clients,
okay,
that is the case. But that's this
very
is
specific. Yeah,
the population of individuals who we need to get them from a place where their body's attacking itself to not anymore, and feeling better and getting their energy back and reducing the inflammation and getting their normal hormonal cycles back. So in those cases, we have to be, food, in that case, food is a very precise medicine that we need to be very specific with. With the average person, 90, 80%, if you're sticking to it, if you're making the right choices during the 80 to 90%, that's the important part. Is a lot of people, they say, oh, I go 80%, during the week I eat well, and then on the weekends I just kind of let go, and I'm 80-20. But if they're weekends, you're just going absolutely crazy. Okay. And then during the week, it's not that great. Like even your week is 80 out of 100, then you're not really fully 80%. You're I'm a math guy, so I'm like 64% because you do 0.8 times 0.8. But it's not a full 80%. And then you're going too crazy on the weekends. You're not really,
it's not balancing.
Really being mindful about how you are making that happen. Like if you're going to do 3,000 calories on the weekend, and you know that every day you normally need 2,000 calories, then one day you got to do 1,000 if you want to get to where you want to get to as far as your health and nutrition go. And you have to understand how to do that, and you have to learn how to do that. So that's what creates freedom is education. If you don't have the education, if you don't get that baseline understanding of how to fuel yourself, then you're reliant on other programs and that type of thing, and it requires you to stay within their bounds.
Well, you talk about education. I mean, you got to pick up a book. You got to read it. You got to watch a program. It's just, isn't that what doctors are for? Isn't that why we go to, like, if we do have a scare, or if we go, if there's a challenge, I'm feeling a little bit off, or I'm feeling, wow, maybe it's not a health scare, but maybe I'm feeling like, oh, wait a minute. I need to buy a new pair of pants or a new new wardrobe, because I was tired of squeezing things in or whatever. Let me just go to the doctor, and then they'll take care of it. Right? I mean, and that's pervasive today. It's almost like it's like you look at plastic surgery. You don't want, you don't like how you look. Okay, we'll change it. It's like, oh, if you got a heart issue, oh, we'll give you some stents. It's like, we do that day in and day out. And then that's the message that we get. Isn't there some truth to that message though? That if there's a challenge, then there are people that can help you.
There are people that can help you, but if you really want your body to be healthy, that's your responsibility. A pill's not going to do it. What's going to do it is what you're putting into your mouth every single day, how much you're sleeping, what you're stressing about, your nervous system, and whether that's ramped up all day because you're stressing about everything. And some of them might be relevant, some of them not. And then also, did I say what you're eating?
Yeah.
But yeah, so what you're eating, your sleep, your stress, and your activity, and doctors can't change that. Only you can change that, and that's what makes up your health. Now you can get some pills and some surgeries to put Band-Aids on things once they develop, but as far as prevention, as far as keeping yourself well, you're not going to be able to do that by just relying on waiting for your medical provider to tell you when something is wrong. I find it very amusing in some ways when people tell me, well, I'm not diabetic. I'm not diabetic, but my blood sugar is like 115 or whatever, because you are diabetic. If your blood sugar is 115, like diabetes, like many other diseases, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. And we can identify well ahead of time. We can identify like this person is 30% towards type 2 diabetes based on their insulin resistance markers. and that type of thing. And not exactly 30%. We can't pinpoint it to that degree, but we can identify people far before they start to develop disease. We don't do that right now in the medical system because it's not what it's built for. It's built to allow you to get a disease and then to give you a medication that you're going to stay on forever, because that's the most profitable model. You have to understand that this is one of the top five what's the most profitable as far as margins go, but one of the top five highest grossing revenue industries in the world is pharmaceuticals and healthcare. And we have to look at that and understand that the system as it is built currently is built to generate the most possible profit. Now, I'm not saying there's not great people working in there who are doing their best to do their best job, but if you get to see your MD for 15 minutes and that's all you get, they can't help you. They cannot help you. They can't evaluate the factors that are really important for your health. They're just looking at a list of symptoms and trying to identify the pharmaceutical medication that might be able to alleviate some of those symptoms.
Is that something that can, like you talk about, like 15 minutes with a doctor? Is it a matter of just increasing the amount of time that the doctor spends with a patient? That, okay, now I have time to actually look further into what else could be going on with this person, or is there more that needs to be fixed other than that? I mean,
yeah, that's a part of it. MDs are trained to prescribe medicine and give surgery, though. So your MD can't counsel you on nutritional supplements. They can't counsel you on nutrition. They can't counsel you on meditation. They can't counsel you on. I mean, they can't. They don't get training for this stuff. Now they might.
That's not part of their
the average medical school student has one course on nutrition, and it's not really nutrition. It's more biochemistry, and they call it nutrition. But they don't learn that. That's not. It's a system that's built to generate a lot of profit, and you don't generate a lot of profit by telling people to change what they eat, because then they're spending money on food. Food can't be patented, and food won't produce those gigantic margins that the healthcare system gets to enjoy.
Given the way people are, though, like we want something easy, right? We want something quick, and that's sold every single day. It's not if we came out with a program of like, make millions of dollars. Here's and it's going to take you 20 years to do it, and it's going to be a lot of hard work from 16-hour days. Here, buy the course. Nobody's signing up for that, right? But have something faster, have something easier, because I think in times I think back in the day, in like caveman days or such, if they had a choice of hunting, that big game out there, and then what? There was one that just died yesterday. It's like it's right here already. Let me just eat that. It's probably going to that one there. So I think in some way there's probably part of our nature to kind of try to look for things that are a bit easier. Such so. Isn't that something that they're just meeting that demand?
Yeah, we do have a tendency to do what's easy, but does that mean it's right? There's a difference between what we have a tendency to do and what we should be doing. And going back to the caveman analogy, like what if the animal had been there for 3 days and it had started to develop some bacteria, and then they ate it and they all died? That is what sometimes tends to happen with conventional medicine. Now, if you get in a car wreck, if you break your leg, if you tear your ACL, if you gash your head and you need stitches, we have the best healthcare system in the world by far. It's incredible. The technology it's the best. You can't beat it. Acute care is incredible. Chronic care, though, is lacking. Chronic care is lacking in many ways. Now, again, I also don't want people to believe that, or people to get the perception that I'm against pharmaceuticals altogether. I tell my clients, stay on this medication, or maybe you should ask your doctor to add this one in sometimes, if it's appropriate. But most of the time, it's not appropriate. Most of the time, when I get people to start eating differently, and when I get people to start using nutritional supplements and sleeping well, and maybe doing some stress reduction practices, most of the time, most of the medications that they were on, they were creating all sorts of side effects. They don't need them anymore. And they go to their doctor, they talk to their doctor about getting off of them, they get off of them, they feel better, they have more energy, they lose weight, they just feel younger and get more life because they focused on what really matters. Now, that is not something. Now, if you're willing to sacrifice, if you say, you know what, I just really enjoy not exercising, I really enjoy living, a lifestyle where I just eat whatever, I don't exercise and don't really care about my health, and I want to rely on using medications to keep my numbers in range so that when I go to the doctor, they don't get, I'm not in a, I don't flag the automated system red. But if that's what you want to do, that's completely fine. But if you really want to live a life where you have natural energy and you're able to wake up every day and you feel healthy and generally well, and your mood is balanced, and you just, you're happy with your body. If that's what you want, you have to put in the work.
You mentioned just now mood. You mentioned stress reduction. I think you said meditation earlier. That's not really something that you hear coupled with typical nutrition conversations or information. Why do you talk about that?
The body's holistic. So I got a PhD in nutrition, but I read everything. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books, more than 10,000 research papers on everything. There's clinical data there for meditation, for yoga, for hypnosis, for acupuncture in certain situations. And I've read the clinical data in every situation that I can, for the clients that I work with, so to make sure that I'm choosing the best modalities that are going to help someone get better. I studied nutrition in depth, to get a PhD. I had studied in depth. I got a master's degree in exercise science, so I could study that in depth, and studied nutrition in depth, and have now moved on to other modalities that I can incorporate, where I spent a good portion of time studying nutritional supplements in great depth. And then, other healing modalities like meditation and yoga and acupuncture. And for most of them, I just want to be able to refer people to the right place. If I have a client that comes to me and they have some type of, nerve pain, I know the nutritional supplements that are going to help them with nerve pain. I know the nutrition plan that's going to help potentially reduce the central nervous system activation. I know the additives that we absolutely have to avoid. I know where they could go as far as like the best, alternative, complementary healthcare solutions for you might be acupuncture. In the case of nerve pain, that's what I'm going to refer you to, because I've read that information. So for me, I don't really define myself as a nutritionist. There's a term called functional medicine doctor that a lot of people use. I don't have a certification in that. I don't use that term. I just help people, lifestyle consultant. I just help people get well with whatever modalities that we can use. I do what's called functional medicine testing. We look at stool tests, we look at urine tests, we look at hair tests. We can look at all sorts of things that your doctor's not looking at. They're not looking at the way that they're not looking at your microbiome. They're not looking at your stool. They're not looking at your urine to look at metabolites of different, fatty acid markers and protein markers and things that tell us some information about what you might be deficient in and what we might need to supplement with, or if you have heavy metal buildup. So we're looking at these functional characteristics that lead to disease. So they don't diagnose disease, but they create inflammation or they create imbalance in some way, and they lead to the disease that gets diagnosed by your doctor. I don't diagnose disease. I don't cure disease. I evaluate someone's lifestyle and I give you recommendations. And then I follow up with you and we see where it's going and we make some adjustments as needed. But I don't operate as like a doctor where I diagnose and cure disease. It's not what I do.
So when you talked about like, having the research and so, I think a lot of folks, and it definitely, I can understand this because I was probably there too, is that you mentioned holistic. That I don't know if that resonates with folks. What does that mean? Because like say like because you're looking at somebody's total health, and part of that is reducing stress. Maybe that includes meditation and stuff. What does that actually do? Because it could be such that, well, somebody could think, well, they're meditating. Okay, they're calming their thoughts and so on, but that's all inside your head. So trying to connect that in like, say, holistic, what exactly does that mean? Can your brain activity, can you like calming your brain, relieving some of the fears that you have inside you, does that really affect you physically? Like in terms of chemicals and whatever else. I mean, I don't.
Yeah. So your brain controls your central nervous system. So your central nervous system, you've heard of it before. There's two branches of your central nervous system. You have the fight or flight branch, which is the branch that gets you all fired up and ready to go. And then you have the rest and digest branch, where it's when you're more calm and more relaxed. When you're in the fight or flight state, your body cannot heal. You have high levels of cortisol. You basically shut off the immune system. You shut off important digestive processes, and you focus all of the energy on the whatever the stressor is, whatever's so creating the fear or the excitement.
So it's not necessarily just like, we talk about fight or flight. Typically, it's like, well, if you're a caveman, right? But I mean, even now, that could come from stress from work, stress from family.
Just it could be sitting in traffic. It's your thoughts. So this is where it comes down to, and I'll make it more simple. Your thoughts dictate what branch of the nervous system you're in. The other branch is the parasympathetic, and this is considered, a lot of people call it the rest and digest branch of the nervous system. This is when your immune system starts to repair your body. This is when you recover. You need to spend a lot of time in this part of the nerve, this branch where you're in this rest and digest state, where you're more relaxed. You need to balance that out. If that becomes imbalanced because you have the sympathetic nervous system that's overly stimulated, that can create disease. That can exacerbate underlying disease. So if there's something already going on, if there's some issues already at play, and then you have this nervous system that's consistently activated because you have these thoughts in your head that are stressful, and they create a release of cortisol. That continuous activation of cortisol affects your sleep, affects the way that your body composition looks. It can affect your entire body. So that's where the thoughts are extremely important. I have a podcast I run 5 days a week called Your Nutrition Prescription. And one day a week, all I do is I mostly talk about thoughts and mindset and that type of thing, because, what you're thinking about, what's going on, is what creates your current physiological state. That creates an unhealthy body or potentially a healthier body, dependent on what your physiological state is, mostly.
So physically, like even down to the cell level, it's not just what you're taking in terms of nutrition that's affecting that, but it's also what's going on in here in your brain, the thoughts you have, the emotions that you're creating, because that will affect the types of chemicals that your body is creating.
Yes, exactly. And that will affect your digestion, because if you're in traffic, so let's say, for example, two different people, one eats a meal and then they're driving in traffic and it stresses them out. It just makes their central nervous system activated.
Yeah, I get pretty activated.
Okay, their GI tract. So when you're tense, when you're stressed, you're tense. Your GI tract tenses up. The food does not move down your GI tract the same way that it would, or that it does in the other person who is driving through the same traffic and says, "Oh, traffic, awesome. This is a great opportunity for me to listen to this podcast that I've been wanting to listen to, of this positive individual who's going to talk about this great topic that uplifts me." So they put that on, and they have this other mindset of, not traffic is the worst and the devil, but traffic is an opportunity for them to catch up on something, and they completely switch the way that they perceive it. That person's going to digest their food better. than the person who's sitting in traffic detesting it. So over time, that could potentially lead to digestive disorders just from being in a high stress state. This has been shown in clinical trials before. Stress is strongly related to irritable bowel syndrome. Meditation, hypnosis, yoga, they all improve irritable bowel syndrome because they help to relax the GI tract when they help to relax the brain and lower the stress levels.
Well, you're in a unique situation because you still continue to have your fingers on the pulse of research, right? You're still in that. You're looking at the papers. You're evaluating all of that stuff. Granted, it's probably Greek to most of us, me and others as well. A lot of technical type of things in there. But is that something that is available to us in some way? You know, I mean, it's like, if I look at the news, which I try not to, if I look at the latest, day shows, daytime talk show segment, it's not talking about this kind of stuff, right? Because, and the fact is, like, you're saying, hey, there are clinical trials. This is science. There's science behind this, and these are the things that are working, right? But that's not what you're hearing. You're hearing of, I don't know, the latest.
A new drug that might be able to help with irritable bowel syndrome. And
the latest diet or whatever. It's like, just kind of feeding kind of like the ease that we talked about earlier. Is there a way to switch that up? I mean, is that a cultural thing? Is that a system?
Popular media has an agenda, and it's always going to be junk information. So turn that stuff off. Turn off the news. Turn off all of that. Find some high quality sources of information. Like I run a podcast, and even on my podcast, I refer you to other people's podcasts who do good health and nutrition podcasts as well. So you don't have to just look for mine, but it's people that I've learned from and people that I know are putting out high quality information. Not everyone's putting out high quality information. Some people are telling you butter in your coffee is going to make you superhuman. That's nonsense. And I know some people might get mad about that listening, but it's nonsense. The only redeeming quality of butter is that it has a small amount of butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid that helps to rebuild the gastrointestinal tract and can provide a good fuel source for the brain. But it has a small amount of that. You can get that from eating a little bit of cold rice, which is it's just nothing spectacular. So stay away from the sensationalist stuff. Start my podcast called Your Nutrition Prescription. You can listen to others as well that I recommend. Just try to find some good sources. You want people to tell you pros and cons. You don't want someone to say keto for everybody. Everybody should be keto. If they're saying that, they have an agenda or they just don't know. Like they don't really understand the physiology, which I see very frequently, or they have an agenda. There's a lot of people out there that are well-meaning, but they just don't understand the physiology, and that's why they think that everybody should be keto. Is they don't know genetics, they don't study that, they don't read research papers. There's a lot of people who have big businesses and sell a lot of products and promote diets that they don't really know the science. They had a six-pack and then they kind of put some media promotion behind that, and they were on the cover of Men's Health or something, and then they took that and ran with it, and now they're giving people nutrition advice. But sometimes it's not the most high quality information. So look for someone who's going to tell you the pros and cons. Some of my clients, I put them on keto. Some of them, most of them not. And when you listen to my podcast, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why going very low carb might not be a good idea, but also some benefits that you can get from doing that. I'm going to tell you why fasting is great in most cases, but where in some cases it might not be. And most people aren't giving you that. And there are a few people that are, and I promote those people as well. I'm happy to, there's a guy named Sean Stevenson who has a Modern Health show. I'm sure most people have heard about him. A guy named Dr. Cabral, who's really good, who has a show called The Cabral Concept. Just, they're putting out excellent information. So it's available. It's just, sometimes you have to find it. If you happen to be listening to this show, you can go check out mine or check out one of their podcasts, the two that I just mentioned, and you will find a really high quality source of information.
And I think that's a challenge, right? If they get to the point where they realize, wait a minute, there's intent behind every single thing. It's not necessarily the intent that you're talking about here. It's not necessarily about sharing this next new thing. It's about, okay, just giving you something easy to take in so that you tune in for the next episode or whatever it might be, So, but if they get to the point where it's like, hold on a minute, let me question what I'm taking in. Now it almost feels like a full-time job to look for those, and the last couple of years have been fake news or whatever. A lot of things can be fake, right? But just trying to hone in on the things that are much more reputable. So it's no longer in the hands of the media to tell you, no, we've vetted it. This is completely on the up and up, and you're good to go on this. Now it falls to the individual, which ultimately, I guess, it should have been in the individual's hands to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see maybe some type of like online media companies coming up where there's going to be some reputation behind them. Potentially, I'm kind of just thinking maybe in the future, somebody will build a company online where they bring reputable sources of health information or other reputable sources of news, and kind of pull that together. But at the end of the day, it comes down to you. And no matter what amount of information that you get from somebody, the most important things are going to be how you feel. Can you maintain that type of lifestyle forever? And does your lab work look good? When you go to the doctor, does all your lab work look good? I think their labs that they run are usually really insufficient, but I won't go into that right now.
Well, you have your I didn't know
podcasts.
this. There are other options for people to get those types of numbers about themselves, right? You don't have to go to the hospital. You don't have to go to the doctor to get these types of tests. Is that accurate?
No, I work with all my clients virtually, send it to their home, or they go to a LabCorp and get their blood drawn and they buy it online. So you can do all this stuff on your own. And it's more comprehensive usually, and sometimes cheaper, even with copays. I've had a few clients that ended up paying a lot more than what we would have spent running their labs through Life Extension is the company that I use, that paid a lot more getting it from their doctor and their insurance covering a portion, and it was still more than what it would cost through Life Extension. So just a example of how messed up our healthcare system is. Just another example. So, it really is, I'm huge on that idea that it's on you. It's your responsibility to take care of your health. That's why my podcast is called Your Nutrition Prescription, because it's important to figure out what works best for you. Anyone telling you this is how you should eat, people can't do that. If you hire someone and they look at your genes and your lab work and they give you a plan for that, now that's a different story. But someone writing a book or giving a talk and saying everyone should eat this way, it's just not how it works. We're so different. We are so different. Your ability to produce ketones is different than mine. Your ability to use fat for fuel is different than mine. The way that you respond to glucose is different than mine, or sugar is different than mine. So, this idea that there is one diet for everyone is just, when you hear people say that, that's when you just go the other way and find a different source.
Well, whether diet or the next great thing, in the news or whatever that people are talking about, the next great health fad. But, there's, I think, one of the things that I'm curious about, particularly when you talk about taking personal responsibility, is that, the market is flooded with supplements, right? Where it's the next thing where, again, to your point, what you're talking about earlier, this particular supplement, this will do this for you. And their you is, it works for everybody kind of a thing. What are your thoughts on that, supplementation, and how does that compare to prescription medication, and how to even like approach whether supplements would be fit for you or not.
So that's where you just got to learn more or work with someone. So it requires just educating yourself to a further degree, or working with a practitioner who's gonna just break that learning curve for you. Supplements, I'm a fan of supplements for most people.
Like a daily vitamin. That would be like a basic, simple supplement.
So daily multivitamin and greens powder is like the baseline, what I usually recommend for people. And then depending on what their other issues are, we might do some fish oil, we might do a probiotic, we might do some turmeric, we might do some berberine. There's a bunch of different options there. The other thing that you mentioned is you compared supplements to pharmaceutical medications.
Yeah.
They just work differently. So berberine, for instance, is a plant compound that we can isolate. If you take 1,500 milligrams of berberine, between 1 gram and 1,500 milligrams, it is as effective as the leading diabetes medication for improving blood sugar control. This is a supplement that costs a lot less than that drug, metformin, costs less than the drug, and it does just as well. Not only does it do that, but it positively alters the gut microbiome to where it can improve symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome and other digestive issues. Not only does it do that, it also reduces cholesterol in individuals with high cholesterol and triglycerides. So if you were to give a pharmaceutical medication, you would have to give 4 different medications to address all these issues. And the side effect list would be probably 15 pages long of the 4 different medications that you give. When you give berberine for blood sugar control in an individual, now I'm only going to use it if we need some additional support on top of nutrition. I'm mostly the time going to go towards berberine if the individual has high cholesterol as well, which is very common. But if we use that, the side effects are it improves blood sugar control, and then has the side effect of improving cholesterol, and then has the side effect of improving the gut, and then has the side effect of improving triglycerides. Like, that's what a lot of these plant compounds. That's what we're finding is there's almost no negative side effects, and they're being studied. There's clinical trials. There's thousands of years of use of these medications, and I mean another one that's getting very popular right now, CBD, the cannabinoids. So there's no overdose. There's no way to overdose on this, and it is getting people off of some anxiety medications that have just crazy side effects that you don't want to do. I mean, side effect of an anxiety medication is you might want to commit suicide more. That's not a good side effect. That's not what you want from your anxiety medication. The side effect of CBD, or you can even do a CBD THC blend, is that you're going to feel more relaxed. You're going to it is shown in some studies to have comparable effects, like to medication for PTSD, for example. And then in individuals with chronic pain, the CBD outperforms pain medications, and these pain medications are extremely addictive, whereas the CBD is not. So as we study these more, we are getting the clinical data to show how effective they are. And they are. And believe me, I've read 5,000 studies on nutritional supplements, and they're just there. Like vitamin C, it's there. If we know that vitamin C and zinc administered together are better for the cold than most drugs that you're going to get when you go to the doctor for the cold. So there should be a public service announcement. Every doctor should be telling you this. You need to take, next time before you come in, you need to take vitamin C and zinc. And we're just not getting that information. So I'm giving that information out on my podcast. I have other people that I can refer you to get that information as well, similar types of information. But that's what gets me fired up. That's what I'm fighting against, is this just the lack of information, lack of education from the media, as you mentioned, from the healthcare system and the way that it's set up, because these studies that I'm referring to have been published in medical journals. Like some of these studies are published in the biggest medical journals in the world. The information is there. No one's going into the doctor's office and saying, hey, I'm going to take you out for golf and a steak. I just need you to tell your patients about vitamin C and zinc. If they did that, the doctor would be doing it out. And as long as we can, because they track the doctor's prescribing habits. So we're going to track. And if you start prescribing vitamin C and zinc, we'll take you out for golf and a steak next month as well. And we'll if you do it for 12 months in a row, we have a conference that you can get your medical education units. We have a conference that will pay for and take you out golfing for a week and take you to get some, and that's the way that it works.
Like, you're very specific about this right now, as far as the progression here.
No, that's the way that it works, though. That's the way that the healthcare system works in many cases. Is doctors are being courted by pharmaceutical companies to prescribe their drugs. And if we were doing that same thing with nutritional supplements, I mean, the doctors would be getting better results. They would be getting better results than they are with their current pharmaceutical medications. But it's just the money's not there. You can't patent vitamin C. You can't patent zinc. That's a natural compound. So big problems and things that I'm, my mission is to really fight against as much as I can and help people see the light and get to a better place with their health and their awareness, and helping other people gain more awareness as well.
Man, Dr. Adrian Chavez, definitely have a fight in front of you.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah. I got a lot of people on my side.
Yeah. Hey, we'll close out with that. But again, if you could just remind folks where, if they wanted to, where could they get more of you? Okay, so highest recommendation, my podcast, Your Nutrition Prescription. I put out an episode every day, about 15 minutes per day. I usually go over one topic. If you listen to it over the course of a year, I put out almost 300 episodes over the course of a year. So if you just made it a habit of listening to it for 1 year, I promise you will have a better nutrition education than most people you know. People will be coming to you, asking you for nutrition advice after that period of time, just by getting in 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes per day. So that's the best place. You can, on social media, I'm Dr. Adrian Chavez at DrAdrian on Instagram. And then if you just type in Your Nutrition Prescription on the search bar on Facebook, you can find the page that I have there. But best thing is to listen to the podcast. Dr. Chavez, amazing.
All right.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Well, folks, I hope you got a lot of value out of that interview with Dr. Chavez. As you can tell, he's very, very passionate about this. I mean, there's a lot of places that we could have gone in terms of things that he is fighting for and fighting against. And I'm sure we'll have him back on to continue with that. But just take one thing that you can act upon immediately, and just start getting the benefit of that. And then as you start getting feedback from yourself and from your body in terms of how that worked out, then just adopt a new thing, adopt something else from the talk. So anyway, folks, again, I hope you enjoyed that. This is Philip with the Everyday Fighter podcast. Talk to you next time.